Welcome to another C1 Advanced ESL-lounge reading lesson video. Today we will be reading about the art of biography and 4 different writers' reflections on the complex challenges of their work. Let's begin with some vocabulary. Adjacent, very near, next to or touching. Advocate, a person who publicly supports or defends a particular cause or person. Akin to, similar to something. Ascertained, found out something for certain. Chronicler, a person who writes accounts of important or historical events. Coherent, logical and consistent, easy to understand. Curator, a keeper or custodian of a museum or other collection. Definitive, so good or complete that it cannot be bettered, conclusive. Gratuitous, done without good reason, uncalled for. Impartial, treating all rivals or disputants equally, fair and just. Inevitably, as is certain to happen, unavoidably. Peripheral, relating to or situated on the edge or periphery of something. Great, now you know the key words, let's read the texts. You are going to read 4 reflections from biographers about their work. Read them carefully to understand each biographer's philosophy. Afterwards, you will answer 10 questions to check your interpretation of each reflection. Okay, let's start with text A. Freya Williams. The biographer walks a perpetual tightrope between empathy and objectivity. To truly understand your subject, you must immerse yourself in their world, read their private letters, and try to see pivotal events through their eyes, which requires a profound sense of connection. However, this very proximity creates the greatest danger, that you become an advocate for your subject rather than an impartial chronicler of their life. It is a constant struggle to maintain the necessary critical distance. You might spend years discovering their vulnerabilities and justifications for their actions, making it all too easy to forgive their failings. The temptation to defend them, to smooth over their uglier aspects, can be immense. Ultimately, your primary duty is not to the person whose life you are documenting, but to the historical truth, as far as it can be ascertained. This requires a certain intellectual coldness, an ability to present the evidence even when it contradicts the narrative you have grown to sympathize with over years of research. End of text A. Let's continue. Leo Maxwell. A common misconception among readers is that biography is simply the act of collecting and assembling facts in chronological order, like building a wall with bricks of information. In reality, it is an act of profound narrative construction, more akin to novel writing than to pure historical reporting. The biographer is inevitably faced with a chaotic jumble of evidence, letters, diaries, contradictory third-party accounts, from which they must shape a coherent and compelling story with a beginning, middle, and end. We are essentially the curators of a life's exhibition. The challenge lies not just in what to include, but in determining the precise weight and placement of each revelatory detail. This process of curation involves selection and emphasis, meaning that no biography can ever be truly definitive or complete. Every biography is an interpretation, a version of a life filtered through the consciousness and inherent biases of the writer. Acknowledging this subjectivity is not a weakness. It is an intellectual honesty that the reader deserves from the outset. End of text B. Let's continue. Isla Chen. The most profound ethical dilemma for a biographer, in my view, concerns the private lives of not just the main subject, but of the peripheral figures in their story. These secondary characters, spouses, children, rivals, friends, never consented to have their lives scrutinized by a stranger decades later for the sake of a book. They are often exposed, their personal flaws and private sorrows laid bare, simply because they were adjacent to a famous individual. Where does one draw the line between providing essential historical context and committing a gratuitous intrusion into a private life? It is a complex question I grapple with on every project, and there are no easy answers. This moral burden weighs heavily on every conscientious biographer. A biographer has a responsibility to be truthful, but also a duty of care to the living, and to the memory of the non-famous dead. Sometimes the most ethical choice is to leave certain stones unturned. End of text C. Let's continue. Ethan Reed. The greatest challenge in writing about a historical figure from the distant past, say, before the age of extensive letter writing, is the deafening silence. The official records, the public acts, the battles, the laws, the political treaties, are often abundant, but the traces of the subject's inner, emotional life are frequently absent. You are left with a public silhouette, a collection of actions without the animating thoughts or feelings that drove them. In these cases, the biographer must learn to read the gaps, the hesitations, and the absences in the historical record with extreme care. Why was this crucial decision made and never explained in any official document? What does the choice of language in a formal letter betray about the writer's hidden state of mind? It becomes an act of informed historical imagination, of constructing a plausible psychological portrait from the faintest of clues, which must be presented to the reader as interpretation, not fact. Okay, time for a few questions to check your understanding. Question 1. Which biographer mentions the moral issues involved in writing about people connected to their main subject? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C. esl-lounge. The text calls this an ethical dilemma and focuses on the peripheral figures in their story. Question 2. Which biographer admits it can be difficult to avoid excusing their subject's faults? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A. Freya Williams. The text says that after spending years with a subject, it becomes all too easy to forgive their failings. Question 3. Which biographer highlights the difficulty of understanding a subject's personality due to a lack of evidence? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D. Ethan Reed. The text says that for figures from the distant past, the traces of the subject's inner, emotional life are frequently absent. Question 4. Which biographer states that a biography can never be a completely factual account of a life? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B. Leo Maxwell. The text argues that because the writer must select and interpret, no biography can ever be truly definitive or complete. Question 5. Which biographer explains the need to maintain an emotional separation from the person they are writing about? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A. Freya Williams. The text says it is a constant struggle to maintain the necessary critical distance from the subject. Question 6. Which biographer suggests their job is to find a clear path through the tangled evidence a person leaves behind? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is B. Leo Maxwell. The text describes the chaotic jumble of evidence from which the writer must shape a coherent and compelling story, which is like finding a clear path. Question 7. Which biographer makes a judgment about what a biographer's most important responsibility is? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A. Freya Williams. The text states that the proba's primary duty is not to the subject, but to the historical truth. Question 8. Which biographer mentions that their work involves making educated guesses about their subject's motivations? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is D. Ethan Reed. The text describes this process as an act of informed historical imagination, of constructing a plausible psychological portrait, which is a sophisticated way of saying making educated guesses. Question 9. Which biographer warns against the biographer taking on the role of a supporter for their subject? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is A. Freya Williams. The text says the greatest danger is that you become an advocate for your subject, rather than an impartial chronicler. Question 10. Which biographer argues for a sensitivity towards private citizens, past and present? Pause the video now to think about your answer. The correct answer is C. esl-lounge. The text says a biographer has a duty of care to the living and to the memory of the non-famous dead. Let's quickly summarize the lesson. On this screen, you can review the main points of the text and the key vocabulary. Finally, here are a few discussion questions. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching this ESL Lounge video. Don't forget to subscribe for more lessons, and we'll see you in the next one.